Welcome to the World Team Chess Championship 2017 in Khanty-Masiysk, Russia. I'm thrilled to be joined by Grandmaster Yevgeny Miroshnichenko. We will be broadcasting both the men's and the women's tournament.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Anna. So a few minutes before the start, and what's we going to talk? I mean, usually I'm responsible for the chess part. Yeah, so, and I'm kind of reliable in that to a degree. So now, as there are no games in progress, let us talk about the general thing. What's all about this World Championship? I mean, some people might not know what's this.
That's true.
Yeah, World Team Championship is.
It is a very important event held every 2 years. So when there's no chess Olympiad, there is a World Team Championship, and the World Team Championship is a different system. It is a round robin between 10 countries, the 10 top teams from 5 continents. So super important for all these teams. There are many favorites. We don't know who is going to win in both sections. And this is also the first time that both the men's and the women's tournaments are held at the same time in the same location. So I think that's nice for the players.
Yeah. All right. So, well, I have some information in front of me. And according to what I have here, a women's tournament will be held for a 6th time. And on 5 previous editions, it's quite interesting. But we used to have favorites in women's chess. So it's usually China, Russia, Ukraine, and Georgia.
Yeah, those 4 are the only countries that have ever won medals at World Team Championships. So it seems that for the women's tournament, these 4 countries have always been dominating.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, in 2013, first board for Ukraine was Katerina Lakno, who now is playing for Russia. So it's always been like that. And interestingly, Russia never won a gold medal. So can they do it at home? That's the question.
That's the main question. And the statistics I've seen on previous editions suggest that it's not easy to play on home field because it's almost never the case that the organizing country wins. So I don't know if that's good or bad luck. Maybe they can break this streak. It is true that the Russian women's team is one of the best, if not the best. They have won the Olympiad basically almost every year except for Baku, but never the World Team Championship. China has been dominating all the women's events, but not the last 2 editions when it was Ukraine and Georgia.
Right, so that's very, very interesting. And to add to this, right, so Russia had a chance in Baku. In the last round, they were playing China. In case of a win, they would probably become gold. I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but they would tie for gold. They lost, and they lost even the place at the pedestal, right? And now we have them playing in round 1.
I think that's the most difficult clash of the first round, the crucial match between Russia and China in the women's tournament. Did you see their faces when they pulled the numbers? So it was Russia first pulling number 5, and then China at the draws. They pulled number 6, so they knew that they were going to face each other.
Right. So there's no surprises with the pairing here, as it's a round robin, only 10 teams, so you can easily figure out who's playing whom. Right, so quickly, the pairings for the women's tournament, it's United States versus Ukraine. I'd say, well, perhaps both teams are not in the best team compositions, but still pretty tough.
They are lacking some of their top players. Ukraine is missing the Muzichuk sisters. The United States is also lacking some of their best players.
I think Irina Krush is not here.
Here.
Right, then we have India versus Georgia, where Georgia, well, perhaps is the favorite according to the composition, to our ratings, but still.
Yeah, they are the defending champions, and they came with the best lineup they could. Nana Dzagnidze, on top of that, is this year's European Women's Champion. But India is, of course, a difficult opponent, even without Hampi Koneru on board 1.
Yeah, right. And Georgia, I have to say, looking at their team, at the ratings of that team, I have to say that they lost quite a bit of rating, nearly all of them.
Yes.
Georgians. So I remember those girls all being rated over 2,500 at some point.
They did have higher rating. In the meantime, we see on the camera the deputy governor of UGRA, Mr. Vsevolod Koltsov, and he is going to make the first move on board 1 in the women's tournament and then on board 1 in the men's tournament.
And who's on board 1, by the way? I mean,
It's a good question on which board one he will make the first move.
yeah, that's interesting. I'm guessing we should talk about not the board one for this round robin, because it's somewhat strangely organized, but for the top seeds, right?
Exactly.
So
I think that he
it's
will make the
clearly,
first move
yeah,
on
it's Russia, China in the women's tournament. In men's tournament, yeah, should we? Well, yeah. So quickly jumping to men's tournament. What do we have? Today, strangely, all the top guys, all the top favorites, they got their prey, I would say. So Russia plays with Egypt, a clear favorite, Russia, certainly. And China is facing Belarus, who's like, I'm guessing, the last time, last moment. They were put in the tournament last moment.
They got a wild card.
Yeah, the
from
wild card.
organization, I believe. India is facing Poland. That is probably the closest clash. The two teams are very close in terms of rating average. The United States is facing Norway. Well, Norway, unfortunately for them, is lacking Magnus Carlsen.
And Jon Ludvig Hammer, so...
And the United States is lacking 3 players, so
it's
not easy.
Yeah, certainly. And then Turkey plays with Ukraine. Ukraine as well is not in the best composition. No Ivanchuk and no Elyanov for Ukraine, but still a huge favorite against the Turkish team.
This is the first time, by the way, that the Turkish team qualified. They participated previously 2 times when Turkey was organizing the European Championship. So as a host, you have the right. And we see the first move
Knight
being
F6.
played.
Yeah, well, that's original. So first move for black. First move for black made by...
I think he wanted to make the first move for the Russian player, so that's what happened, but it's a strange case. Normally we will see on board 1 for Russia Mr. Peter Svidler, but today he got a free day, a well-deserved free day on his birthday.
Right. Interestingly, I just thought, a chess comment. As I said, I'm responsible for chess comment. Well, Knight F6 is perhaps the safest move. If you asked by a VIP person, what move should I make for black, and you don't know yet what white's going to play, probably Knight F6 is the strongest move against anything. Alekhine sounds a bit suspicious, but still is possible to play.
So D4, Knight F6 were the starting moves on board 1 between Egypt and Russia, but this is not going to be the match we will focus on. Russia is a clear favorite, so we will try to see some of the closest matches, and of course in the women's event, Russia versus China. Here you see the open section, the pairings for the first round,
as well as the average ratings, right?
Exactly.
Of the
so
teams.
You see that.
So it's Russia by a tiny margin. They are seed number 1, and China is number 2. And then it's quite a gap. It seems Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken, it's Ukraine, USA, and Poland all very close. Ukraine being the 3rd seed.
Yeah, and also India.
Yeah. And
number 4.
I have to say, if there will be any major surprises in this tournament, they might come from Indian team. Once again, not in the best team available. So Vichy doesn't play for a team for quite some years, but they are missing Hari Krishna as well.
But they can produce a surprise.
Those young players,
they took the bronze medal, and also in Baku they were 4th. So you are right that India could be one of the upset teams. If somebody can get onto the podium, it might be India. China, Russia, and Ukraine are the clear favorites. They are the number 1, number 2, number 3 teams in the open section. And in the women's section, it's of course Russia, China, and Georgia, the 3 heavy favorites.
Right, yeah. So here we have the pairings of the women's section, and as we said, India versus Georgia is probably... Russia and China, India versus Georgia. So I would claim that today's pairing is, for women's section, it's much more interesting, much more tough.
Today we will focus more on the women's event.
We might.
I'm happy.
We might. Not to forget, in the men's section, we have one player from top 10, right? Dingley Ren.
Number 9 on the live rating list.
Yeah, so most of the top 10 players were busy playing Stavanger, and therefore they are not here.
It's such a pity that there are clashes this summer, during the whole chess calendar, but especially the summer is just so
so busy with the events, yeah.
Norway Chess has just finished and the Grand Chess Tour is about to begin. So all the other top stars that you were expecting, Magnus Carlsen and company, are going to play at the Grand Chess Tour, and they have just finished in Norway. That's why they are not here. They would have played for their teams if it wasn't for the clash of these events in terms of the calendar.
Wait, I just thought I'll put some position on the board because it's something that is not started.
Let's start with Russia-China in the
Russia
women's
with
tournament.
China in the women's tournament. Let's see. Yeah, it will take me some time, Warren.
Don't worry. In the meantime, I shall inform you that the official hashtag for the event is hashtag #UGRAChess. You might see it behind Yevgeny, but he's too tall, so he's hiding. He's hiding it behind him, but it's hashtag #UGRAChess. You can send us your
Ukraine.
questions,
It's
your
not
comments
so
about the
easy.
tournament.
Yeah, finally.
Shall I help you?
I think I've managed to find it. And we do have one Alekhine, by the way.
Oh,
Okay, so board one, Russia versus China. It's Alexandra Kostyniuk against Zhu Wenjun. Well, I've always had difficulties pronouncing it correctly, but I think it's Zhu Wenjun rather than Yu Wenyun, but might be wrong.
I think you're right, but I've heard both pronunciations. Zhu Wenjun is the number 2 among women, the second highest rated now, behind Hu Yifan. And she is the candidate for the World Championship for women, so she's going to challenge the other Chinese player.
She's going to
for
challenge
the
their
crown.
board too. So
Yeah,
you have a
Tang
world
Zhongguo.
champion who's on board too. Because
And
it's-
Kostyniuk, of course, I think we don't need to introduce her, former women's world champion. And now, once again, in the top 10, and she's climbing up, she's raising her rating, so she hasn't retired.
Yeah, and I think she's the only one to beat Hu Yifan in the match. Well, Hu Yifan, technically, she lost one of those knockout tournaments. She lost to Monika Sochko, but it was just a 2-games match. And Kostyniuk has beaten Hu Yifan in the longer match. So she's dangerous, right? Right. As for the game itself, nothing to talk about just yet. So
The Spanish main line.
yeah,
that we will
knight
see on
f6,
board
and then
one.
5d3. The move I've never understood, to be honest, because I've always thought if you're keen to play this slower Roy Lopez with d3, you go castle. That's what I thought. And after bishop e7, which happens to be the usual move, then you go d3, because you kind of cut black's option of playing bishop c5. And some people would still play bishop c5 later. I remember Ronin's game when he would go
Even with the loss of a
b5
tempo.
castles, and then later on develop this bishop to c5. Yeah, but they have their argument for making it 5d3. Well, here. That's how our game went. And it was immediately a surprise, it seems, for Zhu Wenjun, who started to think.
On board 2, as you mentioned, it is the current women's world champion Tang Zhongyi facing Katerina Lagno, who won gold at the world teams for Ukraine, and now she can win a gold for Russia since she changed federations in 2014.
And I think she has already helped Russia a lot. In Olympiad in Tromsø, she was the one to defeat Hu Yifan in a very principled match, and therefore Russia won the match against China, and therefore they won the gold in the end.
So she can do that once again now against the other world champion. Tang
Yeah,
Zhongyi.
absolutely. Yeah.
She has the black pieces. You can see her also on the camera. You see the closest to us are Kostyniuk versus Zhu Wenjun, and next to Kostyniuk, of course, you see in a purple shirt, that's Katerina Lagno. The Chinese team is wearing a uniform, and today the Russian ladies decided for a pretty dress, but not a
That's
uniform.
interesting, because I can tell you, I have some insight on this. Kostyniuk, in fact,
That is the uniform,
wears
yes.
the Russian team uniform, but other players, for some reason, decided not, and I'm guessing Olga Giria wears
as
the
well,
uniform.
yeah. Yesterday, the whole team wore this uniform,
Yeah,
so what you
yeah, you
see
can
on
see,
Olga
I mean, it's
Giria,
nice blues.
this dress is
Yeah.
their uniform. But today it seems that they decided that it was not obligatory that they all wear the same kind of dress, the uniform of the Russian women's team. And we have some more information between these two teams, that they met 5 times and China won 2 times. But those times they beat Russia 4-0.
And this is,
That's huge.
demolishing. Huh?
also, the Russian team, the Russian women's team, they have never lost a match at the World Championship with 3-1 or 3.5, but 4-0 against China. So that is crazy. It means that they are such a strong team. They almost never lose a match, but when they lose, they go all in.
They lose terribly, yeah. Well, I'm guessing between those strong teams, it can easily happen that you see the match. I mean, the match looks suspicious, and then you push your position, even if it doesn't really give you a chance, and therefore.
Yeah, that explains the 4-0.
In fact, it's 2.5 and 4-0. It's not such a huge difference. I mean, if you are talking match points.
And I think that's the true team spirit, when you see that your teammates are suffering and then you risk more in order to try to win. So I think from the Russian team, that is a good strategy. Today against China, it is a really crucial match. The winner of this match could win the whole event.
Right, and again,
shall we go through board 3 and board 4?
Yeah, not much to comment on. Our camera is moving.
That's Katerina Lagno on the screen. As we mentioned, she's playing against Tang Zhongyi.
And we have a Samish King's Indian, which once again was played in a... Well, that's a modern trend, I'm guessing. People try to lure each other to some, unknown territories, and therefore a lot of tricky move orders nowadays. One of the examples I can give, I mean, in my career, I was doing a lot of this, knight f3, and then if people would play c5, all of a sudden I would go e4, right. I'm so happy to play Sicilian, for instance, but not something else. Yeah, and therefore, okay, it's a minor issue, but again, c4, g6, f3, anti-Grunfeld, so that you can play d5, you can play c5. There is a weird move, knight h5, I'm guessing, here.
Is it?
One of the weirdest moves in the position, yeah. And that was the idea to play e5. That's a tricky one. Yep. But most principle is, of course, d5 with a lot of theory, but bishop g7 for Lagno is no problem, because she is also playing a King's Indian from time to time.
So why is she thinking? Do you think it's that she is trying to guess what Tang Zhongyi prepared for and she wants to avoid it?
Yeah, most likely, because it might be... I'm not that familiar with, say, Tang Zhongyi's opening repertoires. And I'm guessing, I was commentating on their, let's say, on women's knockout championship, and I remember her switching, changing the openings all the time. So she's
very smart choosing
her she's capable of preparing for one single game, not repeating her, let's say, lines all the time.
It makes sense that Katerina is thinking in this moment, because she's trying to go through her database in her mind and see which games
once again,
could be the crucial in her repertoire.
I'm not sure what Lagno is playing. There are few reliable systems against the Zamish. Perhaps the most, let's say, the most challenging, the most principled would be this pawn sacrifice c5. But here, in fact, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know precisely, because you might just end up in a worse position. There are more positional things like a6, c6, b5, this system, which interestingly works.
She has made a move.
But I don't really have it.
Not yet.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move to, I'm guessing, Gunina against Zhao Xue. And this is surprising, because one e4 from Gunina is already a huge surprise.
It is. She's normally a d4 player.
And then one knight f6 might have been a surprise from Zhao Xue, because I remember her playing e5. I remember her playing c5, but never an Alechin or Alechain, as they call it for some reason. Well, Alechin would be a Russian pronunciation, but I think some 10 years or maybe 15 years ago, this campaign was started that he was Alechin, not Alechin, for some reason. It's kind of Russian, a more noble, it's a more noble way to pronounce Alechin. Yeah, Alechin, you come from some, from peasants, let's say, and Alechin, it's very, very. I don't know.
I'm proud of myself knowing that it's written with a yo. So it's E with 2 dots.
Yeah.
But, it's peasant.
Okay. Not really all that important. Anyway, this was a surprise, apparently. And what's surprising is the line Gunina played. because if you go for c4, you either play 4 pawns, f2, f4, or you take on d6. And then when you take on d6, well, they both do quite strange things, I have to say.
What happened?
Well, I have to explain. I'm suffering from my eternal love to this opening with black. I played it many times. I've lost a lot of games, and I still play it from time to time. I don't know. I like it from those childhood times when, in response to e4, you would play knight f6, and your opponent, and you are both like 6 years old, and your opponent remembers he has to play knight f3 next move after e4. So you'll take his pawn and move too. So here where it comes, I mean, this Alekhine defense.
It did not happen at the World Championship.
It did not happen here. Well, the thing is, if you take here, and then doesn't matter what black takes with, c pawn or e pawn, you kind of try to avoid this bishop g4 thing. So, for instance, one of the systems which are considered to be unpleasant is this rook c1, castles b3. So I make all the useful moves on the queen side, and then you don't have bishop g4. After knight c6, I already go d5. So in fact, black plays e5, lot of theory, white is somewhat better. After knight f3, bishop g4, there is this line, but now after a capture, I would think that c d6, with this logic, so white normally avoids bishop g4. So if white allows bishop g4, now c d6 should be fine. But black takes with e pawn.
That's a different line. And
bishop e2, bishop e7. Now again, it looks like it's fine for black because castles.
These tiny details between lines can make a huge difference in the end.
Yeah, but what's interesting, sometimes, I mean, people are really being clever, but here I'm guessing they probably don't really know what they are doing. I mean, it's interesting because even very top players, sometimes they kind of. And especially with Gunina, I think it's pretty much the case because she's very talented. She's a brilliant tactician, right?
She is.
Yeah, but as for the opening stage, I'm guessing she knows her lines well. But if she's playing something not familiar, she might not be prepared very well.
She must have prepared for e4, e5 mainly. So even the Alekhine, I think. I've seen games by Zhao Xu in the Alekhine, but it's not her main repertoire. So that's why Gunina is thinking now. She has been surprised by the opening choice of her opponent. What about board 3 and board 4? And then maybe we can switch to the men's event, the open section.
So that was board 3, in fact. Gunina plays board 3.
I got used to that she plays usually a bit higher.
She's higher usually, right. Okay, and on board 4 we have
Lei Qingxie against Olga Giria. That's the Chinese board 4. She's one of the youngest in the team, so she is the hope of the national team. And Olga Giria, if I'm correct, she's from this region of Russia.
Yeah,
so she's the local player.
Yeah, she's the. Not sure exactly,
not exactly
what not from Khanty-Masiysk, but from this region for sure. Right, so I'm looking interestingly with the ratings. I mean, every single game you don't have 41 points of Elo is the difference between Kostyniuk and Zhu Wenjun in Zhu Wenjun's favor, and that's the biggest gap. For instance, Gira and Lei Qingxie, they only have 8 points of difference. So, I mean,
that doesn't say anything.
You can imagine how tough this match is. Well, here we had the Caro-Kann, which is blockade Caro-Kann with e5, bishop f5, then knight d2, which is, I don't know what. In fact, I mean, this move exists, and e6, knight b3. Maybe it's a kind of a clever way to play the same thing as everyone does with knight f3 and bishop e2.
Yes, it's a sign line, and it of course wants to prevent c5 on the long run. A funny fact is that you can go c5 in this position, and if it's taken, then you can take it with the bishop, and you win back the piece.
And then you can this line we are measuring takes, bishop takes, knight takes, and then a check. And you take on c5. In fact, something quite similar we have now. So knight d7 was played, knight f3, queen to c7, bishop e2, c5, even though this queen c7 looks like a kind of a loss of a tempo.
I think it is a loss of a
Yeah,
tempo.
but that's a bit strange, because if you want c5, you just can play c5, take with the bishop, and then, well, first of all, knight takes, I'm not sure, but you can give a check, and then white will have to react in a way. Not that c2, c3 is necessarily a bad move, but anyway, compared to what we have in the game, after queen c7 and bishop e2, c5 takes, knight takes, queen takes, you can play c3, or you can play something else. You can play knight d4, that's what I thought. Okay, c3 was played anyway, so now it's transposes. Yeah, it transposes two bishops for white, and I don't know what's that for black. Black probably will put pressure on this dude. Queen c7, knight e7, potentially to c6 or g6, and e5 will be in some sort of a danger.
Yeah, this is still a normal variation of the Caro-Kann, and I think Olga has barely used any time, so
Yeah,
she
so
got to
she's-
this position simply by remembering theory. The time control is 1 hour 30 minutes for the first 40 moves, and then another half an hour, and with every move they get 30-second increment.
Yeah, well, and I have to confess, I tend to like this one more than the longer time control.
You don't like it?
The longer time? No, I like this one more than the
Oh,
longer
you like
time.
this one more. I do
As
like
the-
it also a lot
As the
more.
commentator, when I'm playing, I think I still like to have more time.
I like that
Well-
there's increment. I think it's for those of us who started playing like 20 years ago, and back then there were no digital clocks, so you would play the chess game without having increment, and you could lose on time. I think that was tough. So
You can still lose in time, and it makes it even more
so-
embarrassing when you lose in time with an increment.
I simply like that there's increment, so nobody can play for time. Imagine you are a pawn up or 2 pawns up in an endgame, and your opponent doesn't want to take a draw because he wants to flag you.
Yeah,
That was not chess anymore.
Yeah, that's a nice thing, that we are avoiding those issues where a side simply plays on time. Like, opposite colored bishops, everything is absolutely blocked, and then still it's like you're...
True. And you had to claim a draw in better position so that you wouldn't lose the game.
Okay.
Let's
so
go to the open section and see some of the games, and then we will come back to the women's event and this crucial match between China and Russia.
well, we could actually check China against Belarus, I'm guessing. Well, when we said in the open section, Russia is the top seed, right? But their match against Egypt, I'm guessing, will be more or less an easy walk for Russia. Well, I'll be surprised if I'm wrong. Interestingly, on board one, same figures in rating. It's 23.72 for an Egyptian player and 27.32 for
So
Nepomniachtchi.
it's 400 rating
400
points
difference in favor of Russian players.
Yeah.
But as I said, Russia is a heavy favorite.
Yeah, unfortunately for Egypt, they could not bring their best players, so 3 of their top grandmasters are missing from the event. And even like that, of course, Russia is a favorite, but now that Egypt couldn't even line up their strongest players, this match seems to be, unfortunately, something that could be a 4-0 for Egypt. In favor of Russia.
Yeah.
So let's go for the match China between.
Yeah, as I said, China against Belarus. China still is a huge favorite according to, an average rating. But as I used to say, it's a match on 4 boards between 4 grandmasters and 4 grandmasters. So this can go either way.
Mm-hmm.
So those Belarusian guys, they can play chess. I mean, it won't be all that easy for Chinese.
They did very well in Baku. That's why they are here. So on a board-by-board comparison, of course, the Chinese players are favorites on every board, but the difference is not that big. It's 150 rating points, which in one game doesn't mean that you win for sure. Also, in the case of Russia, we would expect 4-0, but on an individual level, anybody can produce a surprise.
Yeah.
So we shall see.
Okay, so I'm switching to board 1 in China versus Belarus to see Ding Liren against Sergei Zhigalko. And Zhigalko, I have to say, he lost quite a bit of rating. He was at his best, I think he had like 2680. So he was
Close to
closer to 2700. So he's a very gifted player, obviously. Well, the thing is, he's suffering from time troubles, as far as I know. So he tends to spend a lot of time. So it's a bit of a Krishuk mode, I would call it, because, well, every now and again I see him playing his last 10 moves before the time control on increment.
We can see there the Chinese national team versus the team of Belarus. They are both wearing their uniforms. So that's a beautiful view when you see these two teams sporting their national outfit. Also behind them you see the Turkish uniform.
Yeah, well, quite interesting. In the men's tournament, I thought usually, ladies tend to dress, first of all, be more organized. So I would expect more of those uniforms in the women's section. But it looks like really in the men's section, nearly all the teams have their uniform.
I think the ladies are reserving their uniforms for the podium, so when they receive the medals.
Okay, and as for the game itself, started as one knight f3, but quickly became a Catalan. This fashionable line with a check, bishop to e7, castles. Right. Well, once again, I tend to say it every single time I see this position, but I probably will repeat it again for those who are less experienced. What's the point of this strange check on b4? Because, for some people it might seem you just lose a tempo, and especially if you take on c4, you do lose a tempo because, for instance, here, queen takes, b5, queen c2, bishop b7. Bishop c1 to d2 is the most challenging move with bishop on c1, and now you already have it on d2, so it obviously favors white. But the point being that after c6, with bishop on c1, you can play knight c3, and after dc4, you have knight e5. Mm-hmm. So with bishop on c1, you win back your pawn on c4, and you're getting, some pressure, strong center. But with bishop on d2, obviously, black can capture. Yeah, so that's...
So even though it looks illogical to develop the opponent's piece to d2, you force him to develop his bishop, it is not well placed on d2. So white will need another tempo in order to move the bishop once again.
Yeah, after b3, bishop a6 was played. Right, and sometimes this extra tempo for white does disappear if they play bishop f4, and there are lines with knight h5, bishop would go to c1, and later on would be placed to b2. So we might have, same position, but just some extra moves made.
So this is the closed variation of the Catalan that we see on the board. Dingley Ren, as we mentioned, is the highest rated participant of the World Team Championship. He is currently number 9 in the world. Peter Svidler is also, of course, one of the strongest. He is, I believe, the second strongest now, behind Dingley Ren.
With 2750 something. I'm guessing number 14.
But
I was checking the list. Peter is number 14.
Yeah. Hopefully tomorrow we will see Peter playing, and we wanted to congratulate him on his birthday, but today he decided that it was a good moment to take a rest against the lowest rated team, that is Egypt.
Okay, so what's going on after bishop a6? I'm trying to remember. Was it? Wait, no, with bishop on d2 you don't yet play knight c3. I'm guessing some a4 was possible. Or
which is logical with the bishop on a6, that you try to push a4, a5.
What? I'm sorry.
What happened?
What? Bishop went to c1 in one go without bishop f4.
Oh.
So that's surprising. I mean, not that it's such a bad move, but basically you're accepting playing some position tempo down.
Yeah, and that's Dingley Ren on the camera. You can see him number 9 in the world, and he has just played bishop d2 to c1.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, his preparation. So we are just making a joke of something that is a deep preparation. It might be the new main line soon if this game works out well.
Yeah, right. And what's interesting, I don't remember who said this, but it was an observation about those very top players. They don't really care how this move looks like. So
Sure.
that if he believes it's such a good, I mean, if he believes it's a good move in the position, I'd say, so some people tend to pretend, I have my bishop on d2, so I'll better make use of this tempo. He doesn't like bishop on d2, he wants it on c1 and then b2 later, so he's fine with making this move.
But it's curious that he doesn't go for the bishop f4, knight h5, bishop c1 line.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's not the only move for black. I mean, after bishop f4, knight h5. I mean, I'm guessing rook c8 they're playing. Was it the line? Knight c3, yeah. So that the point is when you take, it's knight d2 and you can't take here because a7 is hey. I mean, you can, but right. Okay, so bishop f4, rook c8 is another line. Bishop f4, knight h5 as a possibility. Right, bishop c1, really surprising.
And Sergei Zhigalko, you see him on the screen right now. He's confused by the
He's
bishop
confused,
c1 move.
obviously. Right, then what do we have elsewhere?
Oh, look at the Polish uniform, by the way. They have their names on the back.
with
I like
their
that.
names,
It's the football style.
Right, and in fact, yeah, Poland versus India or India versus Poland, as India is white on board one, is, as we said, the closest matchup for today in the open section. So, shall we check quickly this China-Belarus match?
Yeah,
or?
we can go through at the other boards as well. We see Yu Yang-yi with the black pieces against Vladislav Kovalev from Belarus.
Yeah, and what's interesting again, I'm guessing this move too will need an explanation because no, I mean it's a Petrov. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I know how it's called. No, the thing is, like, well, you are playing someone who is 100 points lower rated. So, well, in an open tournament, I might make an argument that Yu Yang-yi, he might go for something more complex and so.
Yeah.
But it's a team tournament. So on blackboards, you want to be rock solid
as
and
a
then
rock.
press with the white pieces. Yeah.
I think that's nice when in a team competition the players focus more on the team result and what's good for the team and not their individual, oh my god, I'm losing rating attitude.
Yeah, so ready, let's say, to sacrifice even a bit of a rating and so on. Yeah, and there were suggestions that those team tournaments would not be counted for individual rating because, with those let's say people who are playing board 2, board 3,
they play against quite often. Average.
Yeah, they play against a lower rating average, and quite often there is a situation that someone would play a lot of blacks, sometimes in a row.
Also the colors, true.
Yeah,
it's very different to individual events. And for instance, the Chinese women's team, they won the Baku Chess Olympiad, but almost all of the players lost rating.
Yeah, that's
so
for instance.
You win gold and you are losing rating at the same time. That's what we were talking about. This is a team competition, and the team result is what matters, not the individual score. They won board medals, even like this, but their opponents were lower rated, so they couldn't gain rating.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never actually thought of this. Yeah, there might be some sort of a record, like all of your players losing rating.
I think one of them gained rating, but most of them just kept their rating or lost rating, which for a gold medal seems strange.
Yep. So a Petrov, d4, d5. Up to this point, no, this one, rook e1, bishop to e7. c4, knight back to f6. Well, that's something
so
which must be still a theory, of course.
A more interesting position than it could have been from the Petrov.
Right, so now it's
an isolated pawn structure.
Isolated pawn for white. I'm guessing white. Can white play h3 here? I'm guessing this should be white's try because, okay, after bishop takes, queen takes, I'm attacking d5, so no time to take d4. White gets pair of bishops, which might be still not clear after knight f6 because d4 will be hanging. And the main point of h3, I'm waiting for you to play this, after which I was hoping to take on h7.
Is that working?
Yeah,
sure.
so that when
the
king takes, it's knight g5, and now my guess is that king g6 is a bad move. I don't know why.
Let's check
A
it.
queen d3.
And then rook e6.
And
But you
possibly
still
knight
E-
e6.
Yeah, and rook e6,
Knight
bishop f6 was
e6,
working.
attacking the queen, and the next move is knight takes d5 with knight f4 fork.
Yeah.
No, you can feel that king g6 is dangerous. Usually black would take here, but now it's a check. And I'm either taking g5 or after bishop h6,
You take
I can take
on
the
d5.
horse a. I don't know if to take on h6 first. I'll probably just take d5. Yeah, white gets... Well, it's a... Well, a pawn up. It's not about the pawn. I'll just take h6, play rook a to d1, and I think black,
Yes,
black
for
is
instance,
lost.
knight takes d4
Yeah,
could
knight
be like a
d4.
suicide if bishop
Yeah,
takes
because
h6,
I'll
rook
just
e1.
take, bring this rook in. I don't believe
This
black
looks
can hold this
completely
one. Yeah.
lost. So this would be the main trick in this position, that at some point white can take on h7 and go knight g5 with the bishop hanging on h5.
So
after
I'm guessing
h3,
h3. What has to do? Probably bishop has to go to e6, or don't know actually. Yeah. Bishop f3 would be. I mean, maybe this move is playable, but you do accept the worse position, so it doesn't look all that nice. I'm guessing bishop e6 if it works. Because, well, hard to say why it should not work though.
yeah, this looks like a normal position still.
And then maybe I just play this, a3, bishop c2, queen d3, so I switch to something normal. Bishop e... No, we are shown the other game, so I
This
thought
is
bishop
board
e6 was
one,
played.
because finally Sergei Zhigalko reacted to bishop c1.
Yeah. And he played rook c8, which is a normal move, so I'm back again to this Dingley Ram versus Zhigalko. Rook c8 and bishop b2. So indeed, it's just this position, tempo down. Honestly, I don't really understand what's going on after c5. I can't make an argument for this knight being on b1.
And going bishop c1 directly,
yeah.
not bishop f4.
Yeah, that's a bit strange, but we shall see. Yeah, rook c8 and bishop b2 played.
What about board 3?
Board 3, that's how do we call it? London, right? d4,
Which is very
knight
popular
f6.
lately, thanks
Yeah, well,
to
that's-
Magnus Carlsen playing it often, for instance.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because now kind of everyone has his eyes on this London system, and if you check a bit back, there were two players, or maybe, Gatakamsky, who used it throughout his career, and I'm guessing Eric Prieur from France, who has shown all those ideas which you which you see now on the very top level. I think you could find them in his games like 10 years ago. e3, c5, knight d2. I'm not sure what's going on here. Queen c2 and the move. I know. No, I thought some reason I thought bishop f5. No, it can't be right. Knight has to be
With
on
the
b1.
knight on b1, there is
Yeah,
a
then
line
sometimes
where
it's bishop
can-
f5.
So this is the current position, and it's interesting to see that they are only on move 6 after having played for 40 minutes.
Yeah, right. And then, well, perhaps the problem for blacks that, I mean, despite it looks harmless, right? I mean, white seemingly plays some sort of a Slav setup with colors reversed and with an extra tempo. But really, there is such a lot of little tactical ideas that, I mean, if you go a couple of moves, play a couple of careless moves, and you might really end up being worse, and seriously worse. So, yeah, I'm guessing the point is that if you want to play bishop g4 or...
Oh, he has gone bishop g4 as far as I can see it from...
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I don't know, was the other one, yeah. No, so I'm guessing you want to play e6 sooner or later. So if you play it here, then your bishop is left on c8, and white probably just, develops it.
Yes, normally black wishes that the c8 bishop was not stuck behind a pawn chain. So if he could go bishop g4, bishop h5, bishop
g4,
g6,
yeah.
but
If the bishop,
it's a longer run.
Yeah, if the bishop is chased away, then I go bishop h5, bishop g4, otherwise bishop g6. If it's not, Then I'll play e6 and I'll have bishop f5 possibility later. Yeah, I would try to make this one work. I don't know what can be the reason not to play bishop g4. Possibly though knight f. No, I don't see really. I thought knight f3 e6 and some quick knight e5, but I'll always have bishop f5 then. And if I try to play this, then I might run into c4 and bishop f5. And it looks really like Chebanenko Slav with colors reversed and this move not being played.
True.
So might transform into something familiar.
We see that Wei Yi has made a great choice in terms of his opening for today, because Alexandrov has been thinking already over for 25 minutes, which on move 6 is not something that you normally want to do.
That's interesting. And well, the thing about Alexei Alexandrov, he's very well prepared in his lines. So it's very clever,
He's
but
out of the book.
yeah, it's very clever, but not very easy to get him, let's say, on unknown territory. So against e4, it would have been Berlin, and against d4, I'm guessing it's Rogozin in 99% of the cases, which is, I mean, and he knows those lines really well.
Yeah,
So
so
to
the
get something
Chinese
original-
player did very well. Wei Yi is the youngest member of the Chinese team. He's only 18 years old and he's about to break into the very top of the chess world. He is one of the brightest talents of China. Currently world number 19, but I think that soon we will see him approaching the top 10.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting with Wei Yi, because, you know, people, since he was 15, I'm guessing,
They're
people say,
expecting him to challenge the world champion.
he will be the next challenger, and then for next half a year, he doesn't really play well, and people say, oh no, this guy stopped. And then whenever we read somewhere that, okay, Wei Yi is not the same Wei Yi anymore, then again a brilliant result comes in, and probably
True.
people who follow his games, they know what a brilliant tactician he is, and what kind of a really flamboyant style he possesses, and what kind of nice games he can play.
He's just coming from the Chinese league, where he increased his rating with 10 points. On that high level where he is, 10 points is a big deal for one event.
Right, absolutely. Okay, on board 4, not much going on in this match. Kirill Stupak from Belarus against Li Chao. And what's that? E3 against the Slav, and then G6. So how's that? It's a Schlechter, right?
It is.
Schlechter. Knight C3, Bishop G7. Always thought Bishop D3 was the move. After Bishop E2, castles,
Both
castles.
are possible. I sometimes check this line just to have an
Yeah.
alternative against
Yeah,
D4.
but with Bishop E2 somehow. Yeah, what I like about Bishop being on D3, that for instance after B6, I'm guessing E4 is already quite a serious option. Here, Black can. Yeah, so what he does, B6, Bishop D2, Bishop B7, White played Rook C1. So I'm guessing if Black will continue, you know, elusive play, not really, well, provoking any kind of clash in the center, Knight D7, he might run into this, and then it will be, okay, not a big deal, but very pleasant for White version of some Slav exchange where both black bishops are not ideally placed. You can argue that the bishop on D2 could have been on F4, right? But both black bishops on G7, B7, so I think those symmetrical positions, they are quite pleasant for White. I mean, not necessarily White gets something serious. So you probably play something else, and possibly E6.
So that you can take back.
So that you can take with an E pawn, or even with the C pawns, but you have still an option on to put the knight on C6.
Yeah, that's a more flexible approach.
Yeah, or ED5, getting some sort of a weird Carlsbad where like. So the structure is the structure is Carl's, but all the bishops are strangely placed. So White would have had bishop on G5, bishop on D3, black bishop on E7, bishop on C8, develop into G4. Right. So that's the one. Black is thinking how to go on in this one.
And And that has been all the match. We will come back
Right.
to these games later on. Let's have a look at the other match that we mentioned in the open section, India versus Poland.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We did against Wojtaszek, Wojtaszek being somewhat higher rated, but we did recently progressing, and I don't know where he's going to stop.
Yes,
because,
also he is the second of Anish Giri, so I think he has a good experience in preparing critical opening lines for top level chess.
all right, so what happens here? Another Catalan, c4 castles, and knight e5. This is something new, I have to say, at least to me. 6 knight e5 against all the principles. So you move the piece for a second time in a row.
I told you he's the second of Anish.
Yeah, you do not fight for the center, but apparently you have some idea not to let black to have a normal Catalan, it seems.
And he might not even push d4. Maybe he wants
Yeah,
to...
he did play d4 later.
Oh, he did. I was thinking maybe the
Yeah.
trick is that he doesn't even want to.
Yeah, so after d4, I'm guessing this is he's trying to get some sort of a Benoni with this knight on d. Well, it's an interesting concept, I have to say. Knight e5. Yeah, what move black has to play? I mean, okay, one of the moves he played was c5, which is fine. I mean, if you take, then probably just knight takes, trying to... Not that this is something serious. All right, anyway, very original play by Vidit.
Maybe he didn't want to take back on c4 immediately, but play something else and just claim that it's difficult for black to develop with the knight on e5.
Yeah, knight on e5 is not badly placed, right? I'm guessing after knight d7, for instance, he would go d4. Yeah, probably. Okay, c5 was played. C takes, e takes, e3. Interesting. Queen d6, d4, takes, bishop e6, knight c3, and queen b6. All of a sudden, I like white.
I like his position a lot.
Yeah, I mean, somehow... That's quite typical. I mean, you can get this structure, then... I mean, for this structure, white has everything right. Bishop on g2 presses d5, knight on e5 is active. The thing is that it might still not be enough.
It's
right?
a tiny advantage, and we shall see if he can increase it. But I think it's already an
Rook
achievement.
e1 and knight c6. And once again, yeah, if you can get a fresh position with fresh and promising position, so that you might fight for some advantage against Wojtaszek, it's already a huge achievement.
Not easy.
Yeah,
also
because-
worked with top grandmasters, including Vishwanathan Anand. So, of course, he is a great I can't pronounce it.
Theoretician.
Expert
Right.
of theory.
Right. Yeah, he used to work for the best with the best, and he became one of the best himself.
True. It was interesting. I read an interview with him a few years ago, and he said that right after helping Vichy at the World Championship, his chess sort of looked like it got worse. He started losing rating, but it was because all the knowledge that he gained from this experience of working with Vichy Anand, he couldn't digest it immediately. So you need time until that knowledge becomes something that you can really use in your chess.
Yeah, that's okay. And it looks like he's still, well, if not blitzing, but plays quite fast with it. So after knight c6, I thought, yeah, if you take, it's probably not much. I can keep it symmetrical by taking with the queen. Then, if needed, go back to. But knight a4, once again, quickly disturbing this queen. And probably it's not that easy to find a nice square. Well,
Shall we show this
this,
time?
yeah, this I have to mention. But knight c6,
Beautiful.
you want to exchange queens, but you're 2 pieces down. Interestingly, I mean,
Yeah.
a couple of moves happen. I mean, it's move 13. You take the pawn on d4. You win a pawn. At move number 16, you're 2 pieces down.
It's a key factor that knight takes e7 is a check. So if it
Yeah,
was not
absolutely.
a check,
If king would have been on h8, that this line would have worked for black. Right, knight a4, queen has to go, and I'm not sure where it has to go, because every now and again it would run under some, for instance, queen c7. I'll probably play bishop f4 with various potential threats of, some jumps with the queen. Bishop d6, once again, I don't think it's a comfortable setup for black. I can add rook c1, possibly knight c5. So perhaps he just has to go back to d8. After which, once again, I might already switch to something like this, trying to fight for c5 square, which is, well, one of the typical ways to play this. So arguably, white always will have a better structure in this one. So let's say b3, and then I'll try to fight for c5. If black, by some miracle, promotes c5, then again it will be an isolated on d5 plus a majority 2 versus 1 on the queen side. So this might be a clever way to try. Other than that, I can once again play some move like bishop f4. So it does look like it with it will get somewhere.
Yeah, the second board of Poland is the young Jan Krzysztof Duda. He has just crossed 2,700. He had
On the live rating,
an excellent European championship now a week ago. So he has crossed 2,700 on the live rating, as you mentioned, and he's still improving. So playing board 2 for Poland, he's a very dangerous board too.
Right, but he's playing with as well as
another
a very dangerous player. Bashkaran Atiban.
Adiban, I think, needs no introduction. He played an incredible Tata Steel chess tournament, not because of the final standings, but by his opening choices against the top players in the world.
I mean, to play a King's Gambit and not only get away with that. Scandinavian against Magnus Carlsen when he was better.
Incredible. He is such a brave player. So he goes for it even with the black pieces. He went for a win against Karyakin with the black pieces, trying to play for a win when you're black.
Right, no, that's really impressive, and the spirit, it is.
Yes, I also
really
saw
fantastic.
him a few years ago at the Biel Chess Festival, and he would have won the event with a draw in the last round, and he did not take the draw when he was offered a draw in the opening. So I think that is the attitude of a champion.
Yeah, that's really great. Right, as for the game, an anti-Meron with queen c2. Bishop d6, bishop d3. Well, great news. You know what's great news? There's this disturbing move e5, after which, I mean, if both sides know, it's just a draw, I'm afraid. It's like takes this e4 thing, and this.
Yeah.
And what do? I don't remember. h6, queen h4, and so on and so forth.
And
it's Gelfand Anand and so on. And it's kind of an official way to make a draw with a good old friend.
Yeah, and you can't make a draw under 30 moves, so...
But anyway, dc4 is much more combative way to play this one.
It's good that they are both ambitious, both white and black, Duda and Adiban. We will not see a boring drawish line by these two players.
h3, queen to e7. Yeah, by the way, after this capture, there are other moves. You can play a6. You can play b5 at once, which is perhaps still the main line, right? But e5, it's a bit different setup, which is quite reliable. Queen e7, bishop to c7. Why is that? After bishop b3. Yeah, those both. A little prophylactic. Okay, I know bishop b3. They play for some reason so that after b5. I mean, there is a point to bishop b3.
That b5 doesn't
come
b5,
bishop
with a
b7,
tempo.
it doesn't come with a tempo. Probably I can do this.
And now black is one move short. He would need his bishop on b7 already, and the b5 pawn is hanging.
I mean, there was some problem with this one. Yeah, bishop, but white's bishop c7. So that in case of possible knight h4, bishop d2, and then he plays h6. That's the one. Because now with bishop on d6, let's show this.
Knight h4, double threat.
And then knight h4 threatening two forks. Not only the one on f5.
But knight g6.
But also knight g6, using the fact that f7 is pinned. Right. Okay, so that's the point. So he plays bishop c7. White still... Probably, I mean, white cannot yet solve the tension in the center. I mean, basically, it's a game of it's a fight of who will first start taking, or solving the tension in the center. Because if it's black, let's say here, then it turns out the queen is not really nicely placed on e7. Rook will come to e1. Looks like a very nice version of an isolated pawn for white, right? If it's white, on the other hand, so instead of bishop d2, for instance, if I take here, black immediately solves all the issues, it seems. Queen takes, or even bishop takes sometimes, so that if you chase the bishop, I have this option, taking and then controlling the e4 square. Right, so all
so you need
those...
to keep the tension in the center.
Yeah, interesting, because, they make, starting from this point, useful or sometimes even semi-useful moves, right? Like this h3, bishop b3, bishop c7, bishop d2, h6. Who first will run out of those useful moves? After h6, by the way, I'm guessing black wants to play e4. And immediate e4 would probably be not so good, because Eton is hanging, right? And rook e8 does not really... Okay, it does protect Eton, but it drops feather on f7. Okay, so h6. And yep, and now e4 you have to really be aware of. Interesting, this one. I would really... I'm able to talk a lot about positions like that, but let's not forget we have 40 games altogether, so we better be quick switching from one to another. And still, I don't think we'll be...
I think we cannot cover all of the games.
Yeah,
but you can check the games yourself, so if you are rooting for a specific team, you can check only those games on the official website, yugra2017.fide.com, and we will cover as many games as possible, but... I think we shall focus on the main clashes of today, which in the women's tournament will be the China-Russia match that we will go back to after the break.
Yeah, well, let's go for a quick break. Just browsing between the games to make sure that nothing has finished just yet.
No blunders, nothing strange.
No blunders, no quick repetitions, not really.
Make sure to tweet us using the hashtag #UGRAChess. So hashtag #UGRAChess with all your questions, opinions, or anything you want to tell us about the World Team Championship, which has just started in Khanty-Mансийск. We will be back after a short break.
Are we? Not yet. Not yet. Not allowed.
We were not allowed to go on a break.
Okay, we'll start. Well,
it's okay. We can be here for 6 hours non-stop. I try not to go to the toilet.
Yeah, I'm looking at the games. A lot of interesting stuff. So, but after the break, people, we really need that one.
Let's pick some games until somebody allows us to have a break.
Okay, so some game. We want some game. Is there anything which is clear, possibly? For instance,
in the Egypt-Russia match. Oh, you're checking already the women's?
Yeah, that's women's. Still don't see anything which is decided.
And I'll check the tweets, because I'm announcing it all the time, and I'm not looking at the tweets at the moment.
That's clever. Let's check the tweets. No, by the way, I'm looking at China-Russia match. No, I'm not looking anywhere. You are not checking the tweets.
After the break, we will be back with your tweets and more games from the first round of the World Team Chess Championship. See you very soon.